Welcome to the Pink Lady Against Scammers podcast. Hey everybody, I am so excited about my guest today. His name is Mike Knox, and he's going to share with us some phenomenal and interesting stories. He is a retired parole agent and prison guard, and he's got some good stuff to tell us. Mike, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the really cool stories.
Sure. I retired about a year ago from the Department of Corrections. I was a parole agent for about 18 years, and then I was a prison guard for 5 years. And it was just such a horrible job and it's just so negative. It was affecting my health. And I retired, and now I'm acting and doing stand-up comedy full time, and it's just so much better. And I just couldn't see it at the time because it was such like the law enforcement was such like a cult. Um, so I'm health wise just so much better, and just enjoying life and doing what I've always wanted to do.
Awesome. So if you just want to go ahead and tell us some of your stories, and then at the very end, he's going to talk about his book that he's got out. So we're going to plug that book.
Sure. I really wanted to come on because when you're in the prison, you're able to listen to the phone calls. And so the inmates would be on the phone all the time and just cold calling people. And whenever I get cold called, I always get like homeowners cold calls. I always can hear that voice from the prison. And I always identify this guy probably was in prison before, because they're just the greatest talkers. I mean, they could go on forever. And so in the prison, when you would listen to their phone conversations, they would just cold call, and usually they're cold calling women, and they're trying to get them to send money into them, getting them to feel sorry for them, getting them to come visit them. And so it just becomes like a big game for a lot of them. And so they're constantly committing fraud. I mean, the inmates stole all the officers' information, their social security numbers, open up credit cards. There's just constant fraud, constantly going on, constantly, you know, finding women to take care of them. So you would have, like the inmates would have the women send them packages, and then one woman would find out that the other woman that he already had another girlfriend. So there'd be fights that would happen there in the cafeteria or the visiting room. So it was just endless. And I always just thought, if only the world knew what was going on, because prison is just its own contained little city, and the prisoners like to tell the outside world what's going on, and vice versa. And very rarely does the news ever report on that stuff. And so that was one of the things that was constantly going on, was committing fraud, and it had to do with the fact that they had access to telephones. And I would actually a couple times get cold calls to my house. They just randomly calling numbers, and happened they didn't know who I was, but happened to call my house as well, trying to get me to send them money.
Before we started recording 3 years ago, when I started my podcast, I had a lady who was from the North Carolina Bureau of Investigation, and she was an agent for financial scams. Which I didn't tell you, she found me. And so we started talking, and I had her on my podcast. And she talked about some stories, but then the last of it was about Plenty of Fish, how, in prison, they're able to get phones and basically asking the ladies, oh, send me some provocative pictures. I'm being polite, naked pictures. And they would blackmail them stuff. Did you see any of that or
Oh yeah,
hear?
oh yeah, all the time, because you would be able to view their mail, because the mail would be slow. It would be processed through the prison, then it would take usually about 6 months for it to actually get to the inmate. So you would see all those pictures. You would read you just didn't have time to do it, but you could read their letters and see what they were doing and what they were up to. And that's what most of them were doing. But again, they had all the time in the world to do that. And so, why not do that? Because that's, they don't have anything else to do. They're just sitting in a cement box. Um, and so, yeah, you would see that quite a bit. And then the target would be lonely people. And they just wanted, it was when I first got to the prison, I thought nobody's going to go to visiting. Nobody's going to come see these guys. I mean, visiting was full. You'd have people that would come the night before to park and wait to come visit people. So that it was an industry, and those guys knew it. And they knew that if this person didn't work out, the next person would.
Oh, that's crazy. Um, Thank you for your service for working for the prison and as a parole agent, because that can't be easy. And I salute you and for doing that because it doesn't sound like it's a fun job at all. It sounds very difficult. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just tell everybody I had more problems with the people that I worked with than the actual inmates. Like when I retired, the parolees called to congratulate me, and they still do. They call to check up on me. I've had nobody that I worked with, and that's just the reality of it. Is that you're given this incredible amount of power, and it gets abused, and it goes to a lot of people's heads, and they don't know what to do with it. And it's kind of like that the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's overly confident dumb people that now have a gun and a badge. And it just blew my mind. It was somebody that read my book said, you really put into perspective disgust, and I think that's what it is. It's just, I mean, that you could do so much. I got into parole because I did really want to help people, and I really realized after years, like, they don't do anything to help. They say that they do, but they don't help anything. There's no parole like job facility. There's no parole housing. It's all farmed out to other companies. Private industry is running those things, so parole doesn't have any control over it. And then you as the parole agent become the dumping ground because say that the parolee is trying to scam somebody, they don't blame the parolee, they blame the parole agent. Why did you let him scam you know that woman?
These stories when you weren't parole agent or guard that stand out about scamming, are they all generally the same? But is there anything that like popped out that you thought was really crazy?
As a parole agent, I had a guy that he was a I don't know if he was a personal trainer or not, but he was a muscular guy. So he would go to these high end gyms, and he would target women that had a lot of money. And usually it would be like Malibu area. That was one of the areas that I covered. And so then he would, it was over time. He had all the time in the world to do it. And then he would find these very wealthy women, and then he would roofie them. And while they're passed out, he would, ransack their home, but he only would take their purse and then their car. And then in all the police reports, we had, tons of these police reports where he's caught driving like a Rolls Royce with this high end purse. And it was just so interesting because it's like this fringe of like mental illness, because it's like you had the opportunity to take all this other stuff and you didn't. You specifically, it was a purse and the car, and you're always arrested driving down PCH. So it was like this craziness where he's doing the same thing over and over again, but it was always targeting women. And you try to put restrictions like you're not allowed to be in gyms, but he would go into them anyways. And because he was a physically fit guy, people would be attracted to him, and he could talk too. So a lot of them had charisma, and certainly better speaking skills than I had, so they could talk their way in and out of things. And just reading those reports were so amazing to me, because they could have put those skills to other use besides scamming people.
You were going to tell me a story before we started recording. Um, you had a good story, reality star or something. I can't remember what you said.
Well, that was the same guy.
Oh, him.
He had
Okay.
one of the women was a very well known celebrity fitness, and they didn't want the story to get out, and so they covered. They wouldn't cover the story. And here I was reading the police report of this guy that was doing the exact same thing, and the police and lawyers were calling me to blame me, and how dare you let this guy do this. And it was always interesting to me to see the story that got out was maybe a half truth. It wasn't the whole truth of what the guy was doing, but the guy certainly was never going to stop doing it because it was what he was good at. And so all I could do was do my report and go to court, and they didn't give that guy very much time. And he kind of knew that. He knew if I just if I steal a car and a purse, it's not going to be as much as I'm getting a burglary charge. Because at the time, burglary would have gotten you about 5 years, but he was invited into the homes. And so he knew exactly what he was, very meticulous about what he was doing. And so it was interesting to see the PR came in with the attorneys, and they spun that story that she didn't know who he was, and he had basically, broken into the house, and I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Thank you for my fans. I'm safe now. When she had invited him into the house because, she saw this good looking guy, and got duped.
So now, tell us a little bit about your book. You said that you now do comedy as well. I bet your comedy routine is hilarious with all the stories you have from your jobs.
Thank you. Before I could never do law enforcement gets very mad when you do anything outside of law enforcement. And so I could never really do anything about prison. So now I can do stuff about prison. And there's just so many stories about prison. That's why I wrote the book Straight Fish, which was about my time in a maximum security prison. And straight fish is when you're brand new, and it's a derogatory term for the officers because the inmates are not allowed to, curse or be derogatory to the officers. But the straight fish means you're brand new, you don't know anything, and that's a put down.
When did your book come out?
I think the book's probably been about 10 years. It's been a very long time.
Okay. So, because I guess I'll check, but I bet it's on Amazon. I'll have to look there. It's usually where I get all my books. That and Barnes and Noble. So now your comedy act. When did you start that? I don't remember how long you said you retired from there, from the prison system and the parole agent jobs.
I retired a year ago. I've been doing comedy on and off. It's just very hard family wise and work wise. You really do have to, same with acting, which I've been doing in the last year. You really have to, you can't have a job because you got to be on call all the time. Or with comedy, you're going to be there till 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And you really do have to hang out with people and network and get to know people. So it can be very, isolating and lonely. So now I can concentrate on that. And also as my daughter is getting older, my daughter has epilepsy. And so she's been, she's seizure free now, but that was another factor, was she was sick for a very long time in and out of hospitals. So I really couldn't do comedy at that time.
Yeah. Cool. I appreciate you coming on so much. We're gonna tell everybody about the book to check it out. Are you doing just like comedy stuff just in the West Coast where you're at now, or
Yes, mainly
yeah.
Los Angeles.
Okay, cool. I don't get out to Los Angeles. That's on my bucket list to visit is LA and San Francisco. So I hope maybe I get out there someday and I can see your routine. Or maybe you're just going to become so famous, you're going to come to St. Louis and play the Funny Bone or the Fox.
I'm sure. Well, I don't want to be famous. I just want to be working. That's all.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. And make people laugh because, in my opinion, laughter is the best medicine, and we need more laughter nowadays.
I agree, especially in 2024. And thank you so much
Yes.
for having me.
Oh, no problem. Be sure to check out Mike's book. It is on Amazon. It's Straight Fish, A Correctional Officer's Story, a novel of life behind bars. It's available on Kindle and paperback on Amazon, so be sure to check it out. Also, check out and follow my YouTube channel. My handle is Patsy3919. Whenever I have long videos or conversations with scammers on my TikTok lives, and they're too long to put on TikTok, I throw them all over there so you can listen to the whole thing in its entirety. And this past weekend, I have had some doozies. So go over there, check it out. I do have to give a warning. Please do not be drinking anything while watching them, and please go to the bathroom before you watch them. I've had several ladies say, "Oh my God, I started watching it and then I spit out my water." So I don't want to be responsible for anybody spitting out water or having an accident in their pants. So please do that before you watch some of those videos. You can catch me on my TikTok lives every night, approximately 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Saturdays is usually between 7 and 7:30 Central Standard Time. And Wednesday night is guest night. So on some Wednesdays, I have guests. And again, you can check those out on YouTube. Some of my previous guests, which has been like Chad Huber, Jersey John, I'm sorry, Kathy from Advocating for You, who I'm a huge fan of, and several other creators and such. So be sure to go over there and check that out. Follow me on TikTok. It's Pink Lady Against Scammers. I am the one with 29,000 followers. I have several others who are cloned accounts pretending to be me. And also, if during that interview you heard a siren go off, the night I was recording this interview with Mike, we had tornado warnings in St. Louis. Luckily, nothing happened in my area, but it was on when we were talking, and I'm not sure if my microphone picked it up or not, so I didn't want anybody to be concerned. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and as I always say, they don't love you, they love your money.